Hi guys, hi Andreas. Welcome to this webinar out of Copenhagen. This is Finn from Academy. Andreas, where about you today? Well, wherever you are, you're muted right now. So let me just. So I think your sound is on now, Andreas. Please try again. Now I can see your mouth is moving, but your lips are at least. Let's see. I cannot enable your video right now, so perhaps you could do. While you're looking into that, welcome to the rest of you guys. Thank you very much for joining. Andreas with or without sound, and myself, Finn, from Academy. Finally, we can do this webinar about the MB-335 Supply Chain Management Functional Consultant Expert exam, and then do things about how we can actually pass that. With me today, I have Henny, and Alison is joining in too. There is no sound, still muted. That is odd. That was a message over here. Can't hear you. Refreshed and got a sound. Oh, thank you much for the tips. So maybe we would share that in the chat for all of you over here. Refreshed and got the sound. So that could be it. So hopefully this sound will be on. I checked all the settings that I had at least, so it's in here, and I can see that some of the rest of you mentioned in the chat that it worked for you as well. So sorry about that. A few technical issues will stand up, and the rest, I hope, is just going to be plain sailing in here with this, and perhaps with you, Andreas, joining us as well. Could you give it another try, Andreas, to see if we can hear you by now? Nope. No, can't. Okay. The sound doesn't work, Andreas. So let's see. Hopefully we'll get it sorted out on that, Andreas. In the meantime, let me just get started with the presentation in here. So with me, with sound on it, and Andreas currently being muted for whatever technical reason that would be, I'd like to tell you what we're going to do today. The webinar promise, as we had it on the agenda, is that Andreas and I will take you through the new exam and the new certification. Finally, I think we got this webinar planned for half a year or so. Microsoft announced the MB-335 late last year, and they're supposedly going to be airborne before New Year. It wasn't, and it was postponed a couple of times, and so were our webinars, unfortunately. But now it's here, and now our courses back in here. So we're going to walk you through this new exam and the new certification as well. As usual, apart from the fundamentals exam, you don't get a certification just by passing an exam. You have to pass several. And actually, to get this prestigious certification, you need to pass 3 exams. Well, 2 of the usual suspects, and then a 3rd one, as we'll see later on. And then we're going to compare the MB-335 and the MB-320. The MB-335, obviously, the new kid on the block, and the 320 is the good old supply chain management manufacturing exam and certification, which is going to be discontinued from the end of this month. Well, the examination is going to be discontinued, and then the certification is going to expire a bit later on. Next step in here would be to discuss the best way to pass the exam. And I know for a fact that Andreas gave it a shot. I'm not going to ask Andreas if he passed it or not, but I got the fingers crossed for that. And at least perhaps you could share the experience, Andreas. Now you've got sound on. I can hear you smiling out loud.
Okay, that's great. I did refresh the browser session, and now everything seems to work.
Whatever. Yeah, I'm not going to ask which browser you're going to use. I might fear that you will say it's a Microsoft browser. We don't want that. So just,
wow, that's the best you can do.
It is. I
I'm
agree.
using it.
I'm on the Edge browser as well. Normally working fine. I don't know. Anyway, so perfect timing in here. Ready for discussing all the topics, and it just got another one in here about the potential shift in approach, Microsoft potential shift in approach regarding the Dynamics 365 Finance Operations certifications. I just had kind of an experience the other day, and also had an experience with this new expert kind of thing was launched in here. So looking forward to that. That will keep us busy. And as always, if you have any questions during the webinar, please drop us a note in the chat. Then we will have our co-presenters and our moderators, Henny and Alison, trying to help us out with sorting out about the questions. And then at the end of the webinar, we will try our best to answer any of the webinar related questions you might have. Just drop them as soon as you know. We're not going to have a look at it until we get closer to the end of the webinar, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't write them down as you get to your questions, please. Once again, thank you very much for joining. So, Andreas, now with start on, there's no escape. Now you're going to be part of this presentation in here with the things that we're going to do about the new exam and the new certification. Now, you and I have been through the pages of being functional consultants on the associate level, which you have to pass for better and for worse, the MB-300 core and the, well, if it's going to be for the supply chain management associate, it would be the MB-330 for finance 310 and so on. That's kind of old stuff, and that's been with us for a while with all the doing the refreshers every year to maintain your certification. And now, Andreas, I'm going to ask you if you're actually an expert by now. I know you are, but if you're on the expert level from a certification
well,
point of view.
I'm also certified as expert now.
You are? Oh, congratulations. I didn't dare to ask you the other day when we discussed about that, but now you got it. And you even did the beta one, which is normally my experience. That's the toughest one of those.
Yeah, I have done the beta one some weeks ago already. And last week or 2 weeks ago, I have received the information that I have passed it.
Okay, congratulations on that. And later on, we're going to discuss about what you, well, I know you're not allowed to share details from the exam, but from an overall point of view, what you want to share about this in here. So this is what it is right now with the expert level. The first, at least, which is directly called expert by Microsoft, but then as we'll discuss later on, there are other ones, or at least one other one, which you could consider an expert level, even though Microsoft is not calling it that right now. What do you think about the certification path as such? Does it make sense that that you add this expert level on top of things by now?
Well, how you call it is something, yeah, matter of mindset or whatever. But basically telling that manufacturing is on top of the supply chain basics, if you want to call it this way. They can tell, well, for manufacturing, you don't need to know details about pricing, of course, but it always has been some parallel structure and didn't really fit that well, because you got to know a lot about the basic supply chain management functionality to start with manufacturing and to do manufacturing, because it's using sales, purchasing, and well, all areas of supply chain.
And we're going to cover that later on when we're going to have a look into the actual learning paths, so we could discuss what the actual content is. So if I hear correctly, then you think that this is a better approach than having sort of like the MB-330 supply chain management and the 320 in parallel, where it could be an associate either on the 330, well, the supply chain management, or on the 320, missing out on the basics perhaps on.
Yeah, well, personally, I would structure it also a little bit more different, to say that there's the associate, which is the general supply chain management, the basic knowledge, and then of course in purchasing, sales, there are topics which you don't necessarily need to know in manufacturing. So to make one basic level for everybody in that area, and then telling that this is supply chain, trade and logistics expert, and the other one is manufacturing expert. Because why especially manufacturing is an expert? Yeah, well, Microsoft will know.
Yeah. Okay, great. Let's save the things about the actual content, about the learning parts until later on, where we've got a few slides looking into the old retiring MB-320, the new 335, and also bringing in the 330 learning parts is sort of in line with what you're saying, Andreas, that now the expert is in fact building on top of things you would already know from the associate level. So great, that was a heads up. We're looking into the learning parts a little bit later on. Before continuing with those things, let's have a look at the certifications as we have them right now. The beta exam was out in March, about 4 months delay or whatever, and came out of beta in, what was it, Andreas? Was it May or was it this June that came out of beta?
Well, the beta, I think it was already March or April.
Yeah. And then the final one out of beta, so it's
out of beta. This, yeah. I think it was May.
Yeah, May, and May. Then now you got the retiring certifications, mind you. Not just the supply chain management, manufacturing one is retiring now, certifications and exams, but there is another one which is not totally connected with this, but just heads up on the certifications. The other ones retiring as of, well, kind of now, 14 days from now, end of June. But for us, staying focused on the topic of manufacturing, please note that this is a story from Microsoft. This is a Microsoft slide, and then continuing with the new certification being available, which kind of is, I guess, connected to that the examination is available, then certification, of course, should be available. And that would be that you would need the associate level thing and then the new MB-335 passed, as you did, Andreas. Congratulations once again on that. And then you can't renew anymore the certification, the manufacturing associate certification from the end of this year. You know that renewal windows you need to renew every year. Once you pass the exams required, and then you got the certification, you need to renew it every year, which I think is a good idea. We discussed that in another webinar, I think, Andrea. And this is the end of things by the end of the year. That's what it says right now, at least. Sometimes things are changing. Any comments on this, Andreas?
Not really. I think it
not really. Okay. Now I think to one of the two really exciting things that we're going to do today, compare the old way to do things with the MB-320 with the new way of doing things in the 335. And then after this, we're going to bring in the learning path and discuss with your experience as well. Andreas, discuss what you need to be kind of the heads up of what you need to do, because it's not everything that Microsoft updates sort of in parallel. Sometimes things are being delayed, which we learned the hard way when preparing for this webinar right here. But the skills measured, you know, when you pop into the exam descriptions on Microsoft website, navigate to the exam of MB-335 now, and still for a while, the MB-320, you'll get an overview of things that you need to do. And this is very different between the two. I don't know, Andreas, and that's why I'm going to ask you the actual content, how different it is, especially when we're going to have a look into the learning part. But the description and how things are being measured in the examination is quite different. Oops, how did that work for you? When I had a look at this in here, what was the actual experience in the exam? You probably don't even recall when you did the 320, but what was the skills measured in the MB-335 compared to the actual description? How much was production or manufacturing, as we normally call it? How much was other things?
Well, there have been a few questions about, for example, the engineering change management and the asset management. So for the new modules and features which have not been available at the time when the MB-320 certification was released. So this is additionally, but that's basically, it's still, most of the question are about manufacturing, lean manufacturing with the Kanbans, discrete manufacturing, and also a lot about the process manufacturing features.
Yeah. So still, you need to know a lot about manufacturing. You can't get away with just knowing about discrete or process. You also need to know about lean.
Well, if you answer everything else correctly, then maybe you can skip it. But
that chance.
If you want to skip something, rather skip the asset management. That's fewer questions.
Yeah. So what's up here is a lot of things about production. Then you got a few things about the configured products. I'm curious about that because configured products, that's part of MB-330. Is it configured products from a manufacturing point of view, or is it doing a recap of things, or what's in that? It's still up to 15 or 20%.
Yeah, basically it's about the product configurator, configuration features. It's very similar to what is required in MB-330.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the configuration, well, basically what you do with the configuration is you generate a bill of materials and a route.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's then used in production, but for the production process itself, well, except that, of course, configuration, it means that it's make to order and that there, well, is a different approach. But from the core functionality in manufacturing, it doesn't matter whether the bill of material is generated from the configurator or manually created.
No. And what about the thing about the additional supply chain management features? Is that the asset management or
yes, that's the asset management primarily. Then there is something about the dynamics guides, the virtual reality thing.
Right.
Yeah, maybe one. Well, since it's hard to show this if you don't have the devices, it's more reading the materials. But yeah, it's as you can see also from the percentage, 10 to 15% means 2 questions about 2 out of, I think it was 70. And well, I don't remember exactly if both questions have been about asset management or only.
And you wouldn't tell even if you did, I guess. But that's a different story.
I don't know if this would be a secret.
No, I don't know. But all those pages you read through when you do the exam and don't tell about this or that or whatever. But what we could talk about, and now we're sort of leading into that, is what do you need to study, and is it something that we have done already when we did things about the, I know it says MB-320, but I'm also going to bring in, as we discussed about the MB-330 as well. First, we have kind of the similarities between the good old 320 and the new kid on the block. Same in the beginning. All the things about the manufacturing. That's the same learning path. So these are the names of the learning paths. It's not about topics. These are the learning paths you will find in Microsoft Learn. When you look up the exam and you get down a bit and wait to prepare on your own, this is where you find these learning paths being shared, as it is right now, between MB-320, as long as you can find it, mind you, and then the 335. And that's also included in the new, if I remember correctly, Andreas, the master planning includes the planning optimization and so on as well, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
So these are the same topics. So if you're sort of up to speed on the 320, you would know most of the topics in 335. Is that a fair assumption?
Well, a good percentage, yes.
A good percentage. That was a very, well, not 100% affirmative on that because, well, there are other learning paths. So let's bring in some.
I'm not sure if it's enough to know MB300, everything in MB320, so everything about manufacturing. If you fail with 1 or 2 questions, which is easy because I'm not sure if they have improved the quality of the questions, but as you know, exams, there are clear questions and there are questions where you ask yourself, what do they want to know?
And that's a polite way of putting things, isn't it? If everybody who tried the exams, you would know what is being mentioned in here about the quality of the questions on that. So moving forward to the ones I put in here in green. And as I hear, Andreas, it's not enough to know about the manufacturing. Even if you did the 320 and you passed that flying colors or whatever, you still need to study because there are some new topics on that. And the thing we discussed about this, Andreas, was that there's a lot of things on the learning path, that is, on the 335, which is now, if you look for it, it's also part of the 330, the new 330, that is. If you did the 330 in the old days, you wouldn't find these new learning paths. These are new learning paths, which are nowadays found on the MB330. If you look for it, it's not directly on the exam description. This is very confusing. And also, when you have a look on the learning paths themselves, if you navigate to those, it won't mention that it's part of the 330 nowadays. Fairly confusing, that is. But these are some of the topics you mentioned about, Andreas, was it?
Well, what I wanted to tell about the MB330, I think it was in March, the exam has been updated and there was some document about the changes. But in Microsoft Learn, it's still the old materials for the exam before March. Well, the PowerPoint for the presentation, they updated the trainer files. Yeah, some.
But just to make sure, for those of you who are going to do the MB335 and perhaps in the past did the MB330, and you would think you could just get away with studying the manufacturing parts, be aware of that these new learning paths in here are being in the MB335 as well as in the 330. If you are new to MB330, you're going to do it soon. These are going to be in here as well. And these are new things and then being part of the MB335. But there's even more. There's an abundance of learning paths with the MB335. We got the ones which we're talking about with setting up the products and other things too. So there are 3 additional learning paths which have been with the MB330 for ages, basically. And they're also part of the learning path for the MB335. Nothing new as far as I can tell, Andreas. Have you noticed that there's been anything new added to these learning paths recently?
Well, maybe especially for the products, the focus in MB330 is different because there it's more about the process manufacturing with formulas, batch attributes, and so on, which are also a topic in MB330. But here in the manufacturing MB335, it's more focused on that. So more details, maybe.
But I guess that shows more in the exam than it does on the learning path, because as far as I know, these learning paths they're being shared. So it's the same learning path, whether you sort of navigate to it from 335 or you navigate to it from MB330. It's the same learning path, as if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that is, of course, Microsoft doesn't write everything from scratch every time they release something, a new feature. So they make it one time and then reuse the materials.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to the exam description also for the MB330 is being updated sort of on the front page of this. But as you mentioned, the learning paths are in there, and or was it the study guide is updated as well?
I think
Was that
it's
what
in
you
the
mentioned?
study guide, yes.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll have also presentations coming out for the MB-335 soon. Just checked them yesterday. There was nothing in there as far as I could see, but hopefully coming out just in time for our classes, I hope, this time around.
Otherwise, we got to do what Microsoft probably will do, use the MB-320 materials plus the additional topics from MB-330.
Yeah. And voila, you have a new set of presentations for the new.
Of course, you can't use it one-to-one, but the starting point is clear.
Well, a lot of things in there. It really sounds like so even more busy than in the old days, Andreas. Don't you think so? If this is going to be like a 5-day class or whatever, this is going to be busy.
Yeah, this is always the challenge with this. When I did, it was still AX 2012 manufacturing courses 10 or 15 years, well, 10 years ago, for AX 2012. This was already nearly too much, and it was a 6-day class with the process, the lean, and the discrete manufacturing. And yeah, there's always adding some additional topics, hardly removing anything.
Yeah,
that's
the way it is. That you have to do more in less time. I think that's like the rest of the work life, I guess, for that. But putting the stress on the classroom, that's for sure. Now I'm having a slight trouble with my camera. I hope this sound is still on. I can see sharing the screen, so let's just continue. Moving on to the next slide, unless Andreas, you got more things that you would like to add to this.
Well, if there are questions, we can discuss it. But
yeah,
from my side.
But before we go on to questions, I like to have some hints, because I was signed up for the beta exam, and then when I got the setup, there's so much production in there. Me not being a production guy whatsoever, I sort of okay, I'll wait. But maybe now this is a good time for me to ask you, what's the best way to pass the exam, and also on the next slide, what is the best way to prepare? So, Andreas, what would you think? Experience with the 320, reading up on the MB-330, or what's the best way to pass the exam, would you say?
Well, basically, like for all of these exams, having a good experience, good knowledge, working knowledge is a good basis, absolutely. So, because then you can imagine how this usually would work and find out ways, but still you've got to go through the materials or attend a course. Well, but even if you attend a course, you still got to additionally learn the materials. Or if you want to make sure you pass it by heart, then you've got to learn it by heart.
Yeah.
Well, there are detailed questions about things you often don't need to know by heart all the time, because if you have a question in real life, then there is something I've got to check. But for the certification exam, you've got to learn. The focus is on manufacturing, so just knowing asset management and engineering change management will not be enough.
No.
Absolutely not. But of course, if you additional to the discrete and process and lean manufacturing, learn asset management and engineering change management, it will improve your chances, because then you answer that 2, 3, 4 questions in total. And if they are correct, of course, the chances that you exceed the 70% minimum mark are higher, as if you leave this away. And there are details about process manufacturing, when I remember correctly, about the formulas and all this kind of stuff, and also something about lean. So core focus is, well, still, since for process and lean you must know discrete. So you've got to learn, but it's not, it is not more required than the other areas. So it's not that you mainly learn discrete and then learn also some process and lean, but you learn both way, or all three ways are more or less equal important.
In the old days, if I remember correctly, there were not nearly as many questions around lean manufacturing than there was around discrete, because discrete was sort of the big gun, both from a learning point of view. It was kind of the fundamentals for all of that. And process manufacturing was learning. You had to learn, as you said, the discrete before you could do process, and I guess before you could do lean as well. Is it still that lean manufacturing is the small kid in here, the little brother kind of things?
Maybe it's not exactly as important as the other two areas, but you shouldn't leave it away.
Okay. So basically, preparing all the manufacturing things as we did with the MB-320, and then also make sure that you would have the fundamental things that you would have with setting up products and so on, and even with purchase and sales. Would you really think about that at this?
Not really. Well, of course, product configuration, where there is something about from the configuration. Of course, you can calculate the sales price, but this is not really pricing in sales, or not the trade agreements and so on. So
the reason why I'm asking. Oh, sorry.
A little about purchasing and sales. Of course, for subcontracting, you need purchasing and so on. So you cannot completely, but it's not the core area of this.
And that's perhaps leading back to the discussion we had about the learning path, where there is, what was it now, 13 different learning paths, with some of those being the configure and manage sales and customers, and similarly on the vendors side. I guess the reason for having these in there is that you will then have those very few topics that you just mentioned, especially on the purchase side, and then there'll be a lot of things that is not covered by the exam, but it's just either Microsoft not getting there yet and doing a special configure, manage, procurement, and vendors for manufacturing or thing like that. There'll be a lot of wasted time if you prepare too much on those learning paths, the old ones with products, procurement, sales, unless you stick to the small manufacturing bits on those. Is that a correct assumption?
Not sure. Can you?
Yeah, that was a long question. Sorry.
Can you make it short?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there was. Sorry, guys, for flickering the screen. Let me just get back to the learning path, because that might be easier. Now, with the learning path, at the bottom we have these three blue learning paths, which are kind of a good old MB-330 learning path. And when I saw this, I thought, hey, that's going to be a lot of questions they already kind of asked at the exam with the MB-330. Why would they want to do a thing like that? So my question to you was, if I was going to prepare, if I wanted not to chicken out this time, but actually do the exam on this, would it be a fair assumption to read in the blue learning paths the things which are related to manufacturing only, and not recap on all the other things which could be done?
Well, I think you don't need to learn too much about procurement and sales. Also, if you look at the percentages for the different areas, which is one slide above, I think, or 2 slides earlier, then you can see that product management configuration is, I think, 15 to 20% or something like that. So it is not a main area, and yeah.
No, manufacturing stuff is it, and since these new things in there, especially with the engineering change management and so on, I think I'll then assume I'll go from the top and do all of those, and then do some of the things in the green, and then hopefully just.
Well, configuration is a topic as mentioned, but
yeah,
so that's a configuration, but that's configuration.
Yeah, and that's quite often things that you would skip when you're preparing for the MB-330, I think, because I don't think normally there'll be questions about the product configurator, or at least maybe dimension-based configuration, but not the product configurator in the MB-330. Okay, you have to invest your time carefully, and we also have to do that for the webinar. So, well, thanks for sharing your thoughts, Andreas, on this, and sorry for my long question on that, leading to some confusion about that. So how would you prepare? I know you work on a lot of projects with manufacturing, but you're not the typical student for this. So if you were a student like me, somebody else who would know the ways around the application, been working with the supply chain management, but not really too much with manufacturing as such. How would you prepare? Would you? Well, of course, I'd like to mention about our courses with you and the instructor, but how would you prepare? Is it self-studying? Is it hands-on on a project? Is it doing the learning path on Microsoft Learn, or
depends how efficient, well, how much value your time has got. Yeah. If you have a lot of time and you don't know what to do with your time, then self-study is a good option. Well,
yeah.
Seriously talking, you can do a lot with self-study, of course, but the issue with this is if you are from scratch, if you start from scratch, then it's very hard to know what's important, what's less important, on what to focus. Yeah. It's different if you are experienced already, then you know already what it is about, and then you can work with self-study more efficiently.
Yeah.
So for this, I would recommend that you attend a course, Finn.
Yeah, thanks. That's what I want to hear. Now, that aside, then, well, we meet in the classroom, Andreas, with me as a student. But apart from that, if I was going to study myself, because I don't value my time too much, I'll be careful about the learning path. As we discussed, there are new things, even if they pass the MB-330, there are now new learning paths being part of this MB-335. So we will have to get back to do those learning paths in here and study in some details. As you mentioned, especially about the product configurator and so on, and catch up on that. Yeah.
And in general, talking, just sitting in a class, whether it's online or in person, no matter if it's one of our classes or any other class, just sitting there is not enough. In addition, you've got to learn materials also.
Oh, that's too bad. I thought I could just sit back and then
sit and relax.
Tell me all this stuff, and then too bad. There's no escape. These days, the exams are pretty tough, I think, just about all of them. 920 being the single one out, being fairly easy to most people. But the rest of the ones in finance operations, they're keeping us busy with the preparations and so on. Great. Talking about the 920, I would like to share some new things or some things about the Microsoft potential shift in the way that they do Dynamics 365 finance operations certifications. What's going on? You attend some of the meetings with the Microsoft certified trainers when you got the time. I do so. We read the news, but still it's hard to keep track of what's going on and follow Microsoft's ideas. Now we got 3 levels of the certifications in. We got the fundamentals, the one which we could do and then get a certification, the MB-920 fundamentals exam. Part of that, you got a certification, the fundamentals one. For the associate, you need to pass 2. So if you've got to be a finance guy, you need to pass the financial one on top of MB300 core. If you want to be supply chain management, as we discussed, you have to pass the 330 on top of the MB300 core. And if you want to be a developer guy, you would need to pass the MB300 apps development, as it's called, and then core as well. Now, the thing that I saw the other day was the commerce is retiring. And we talked about that the other day, Andreas. If you had any kind of inside information about what's happening, because as far as I know, the application is in widespread use, is still being used. So thinking out loud here, what's happening? Is there going to be an expert exam or whatever on top of the associate for the supply chain management? Because I would think that you would need to have the supply chain management to do all the things about the product and distribution and warehouses and other things too, and then know about the commerce. So you think that the commerce is going to be an expert level exam, or what do you think?
Well, if we take a look at the history of with the manufacturing certification, then MB320 was retiring and was set to retire already quite some time ago with a new MB335, and this was delayed for months. So I wouldn't be too surprised if Microsoft also does this with the commerce certification, that maybe there will be a commerce expert, same structures for the manufacturing. So because that would make sense to me, but I have no official information on that.
Okay. If any of you guys attending this webinar have got any kind of inside information about that, and for me being a financial guy as well, anything about being a finance expert who don't want to be an expert, then please share your knowledge in the chat if you know anything about that. I would think that would be a logical way of doing that. Of course, not thinking about Microsoft making more money on the exams, but more expert level kind of things in there. Once they started now with the manufacturing expert thing, the MB335 and so on with that, I think it'll make sense to do that, especially when I saw the commerce is retiring. I have seen nothing about what's the reason for that. Just something about the product change or whatever it was. I don't know what that is. There's nothing new coming out about commerce, but that's what I would think. Guessing about just like you are right now. Guessing is all we can do right now, that there will be sooner or later perhaps an expert kind of thing on top of supply chain management, and then hopefully also one on finance. I think the solution architect is, even though you could do it on any associate, quite often it's on development guys who would do a solution architect on that, even though it's not called expert. To me, it is, you need to do 3 exams to get those expert kind of things in here.
All the same story as with project accounting, the project module in finance and operation, which has become a completely separate app. Don't know if
well, yes, that's actually one of our most popular on-demand courses. That's the project management and accounting things in there. When you got some videos too, by the way, and so because there's hardly anything to find. Microsoft's got a few things, but they call it project operations. And when you open the application, it's called project management accounting. It's fairly confusing on that. Hopefully it's coming back. It was discontinued with, what was it, AX 2012? There wasn't an exam out for project management accounting many years ago. I think it was. Well, that's a different day, a different topic on that. We got some questions in the chat box, Andreas, and while we're having a look at that, perhaps I know Alison, our co-moderator, has had some trouble in the UK with power outage, but I just want to know if are you in with us now, Alison, please?
I'm here.
Ah, that's good. Could you please take over and present the slide? And congratulations, be back on power.
I know, apologies. My power went out. I think it's too hot in the UK. We're not used to the sunshine. So.
Okay, we've got no comments on the UK whatsoever. So please continue with this, and then Andreas and I will have a look at the chat, and then hopefully be ready with some answers. Yeah. So I'll keep quiet.
Absolutely. Thank you, Finn. Thanks, Andreas. So you've been hearing all about the MB-335 today. We just wanted to draw your attention to our expert exam preparation course. So this is a 5-day course with Andreas. So the opportunity to learn alongside Andreas live. And we have both live online available and a classroom-based course available. So if you'd like to join Andreas next month from July the 10th, it's live online, so you don't need to go anywhere. You just need to be at your computer. It's really flexible. It's 5 days delivered in real time, but as a location of your choosing, as I just said. So it's as close as you'll get to being in the classroom with Andreas. It's small class sizes, and you'll have the opportunity to get real-time support and ask questions to make sure you benefit as much as you can directly from this training. So we will pop, in fact, I will pop the link to the live online page on our website in the chat now, so you can explore that. If you prefer to learn in the classroom in real life in Copenhagen in September the 25th for 5 days, Andreas will be delivering the same course, but in the classroom, back to being actually physically in the same room as each other, which is quite an alien concept to me now, doing most of these things live online. So again, I'll pop the link to the classroom-based course in the chat for you as well to have a look at today. So whether you prefer to be online in July or in real life in Copenhagen in September, it's a fantastic opportunity to actually be in person with Andreas and learn everything you need to know to prepare to pass this certification exam. Thank you, Finn. I'll go back to you guys.
Okay. Thank you very much, Alison. And the only drawback I could see with these courses with Andreas was he said I had to keep awake during the training on that and also participate in the hands-on labs and other things that we do. Now, Andreas, we've got quite a few questions in the chat about things in here. So is it okay with you if I select some of these ones, as many as we could do within the next 10 minutes? I'll read them aloud. And let's
Absolutely.
Okay, great. I will check them from the top. In here, there was a question from Vivek. How long would it take to learn manufacturing? As it seems there are concepts very confusing, like if you want to learn manufacturing and crack the MB-330, what time would it take?
Well, the course, as we have heard just before, is a week, 5 days.
Yep.
But this certainly is not enough, especially if you are a beginner. Well, maybe another week full of learning, then you're at the starting point. Yeah, in the past, I have had people who did it after a little bit more than a week. With 2 weeks minimum.
Yep.
But of course, you're not an expert in manufacturing after this.
No, there's always things in there, but giving it a go after a couple of weeks, that could be it. And then watch your videos on Microsoft, and if you're part of our live online training, we do record the sessions and make them available for the class students as well, doing a recap, and of course doing the hands-on, as we always recommend very much, I think. And I think even these days, where in my experience, that some of the exam questions are directly related to the hands-on that you'll find on Learn. So there's a two-side benefit of doing the hands-on. You actually learn something, muscle memory and all that jazz, and then you're closer to answering the questions in the exam, I would think. So thanks, Andreas. A couple of weeks set aside, that could be an advice. A question here musing about the lean manufacturing from Christian. Is lean manufacturing in use at customers? There's no knowledge within Microsoft to this module. That was a quote I have to add on that in here. So Andreas, is this manufacturing still used at customers?
Well, it was introduced, I think, with AX2012 more than 10 years ago. And originally this was developed from a Microsoft partner, and of course a partner only develops a product when they have got customers on this. It is not a very common in use, but there are a few customers. As far as personally, we have talked about it in some projects, but really implemented maybe one time. I don't remember correctly.
No. Okay.
So yes, there is, but limited usage.
All right. Question from Ilka, I think it is. What is the duration of this exam, the MB-335? Is it 3 hours? Is kind of usual, or what is it like?
Oh, I'm not sure. I think maybe 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Then there is always the first part where you've got to accept all the confidentiality and so on, and then there's the feedback part. But I think about 2 hours.
Yeah. Okay. I just checked the study guide on that. It doesn't mention the duration, but did mention, just for the benefit of us not having American English as our preferred language, then you can add 30 minutes. It's still possible on that. And sometimes you just need all the time you can get on that.
But I think if you try to register for the exam, then it will tell you how long it takes.
Okay, great. And then also from are they really, I can see the raised eyebrows in here, are they really asking procurement and sales related questions in MB-335? And I think you said earlier, no, not really. It was more like on the actual manufacturing of things, if you were doing subcontracting on your production. Was that true?
Yeah, well, basically, sales and procurement is not topic of the exam.
No. Okay. Great. Vivek again. What's the best way to learn manufacturing without a production background? Possible?
Well, again, some course to understand the basics. Then, well, best ways to being involved in a project where they implement it or have implemented already, and then learn the rest. So what you got to start is with discrete manufacturing, because that's the basis for lean manufacturing and for process manufacturing. So that's the core functionality, and basically process manufacturing is discrete with some additional features from a functional point of view. And lean manufacturing also is bill of materials are used the same way, more or less, but they don't use routes. Instead of this, we use Kanbans, and Kanbans replace production orders.
But I guess it's a fairly steep learning curve if you have to learn sort of the trade of production while you're studying for the MB-335. Wouldn't you say that you would do some kind of external non-Microsoft preparation course for learning the trade before you take on the challenge of doing the MB-335?
The trade, you mean the
actual how manufacturing is being done without Microsoft? How it's being done? What you mean by manufacturing? What it is, and so on. You have to know the way of doing manufacturing before you then look into an application. Isn't it very hard to learn that in parallel?
Yeah, well, it depends on how deep, because manufacturing and manufacturing organization, most people know in a way what manufacturing is if you assemble a seat, then well, you can imagine what they do, and what they do in detail. Well, that's in the details, but I think it's not that hard to understand the manufacturing concepts.
Okay, so there's hope. There's hope for that too. Okay, getting closer to the end, just say a couple of more questions in here, a couple of from Anwar Ahmed. First one, do they, the exam, I guess, ask about the formula for process manufacturing, or do they give a formula with the BOM and ask you to provide the output?
Don't 100% understand what this is about. Well, the formula is, from a functional point of view and from the data structure, BOM with some additional fields and features. Well, of course, when they ask a question about the formula, then you've got to know what's, for example, the byproducts and the co-products and so on.
And then I guess, thanks. And then I guess a question down sort of a similar line. Do Microsoft ask configuration impacts that you configure in the product setting? And I guess from what you told earlier, the answer would be yes. There will be things about the product configuration things in there.
Thing about the product configurations.
Yeah.
Of course, not everybody gets the same questions. There's a pool of questions. So
yeah. Always having sort of a database and then doing some kind of randomization, which I think they've always been doing. So when you learn the questions where you did the wrong answers, you guess, and then coming back and all of a surprise, you get some new questions in here. That's how it works. Question in there: how much does it learn actually to do hands-on? So if you're not attending a course and you've got access to either a Microsoft or one of our sandboxes or one back at home, how much help is it actually to do the hands-on and do the exercises?
Yeah, it helps you very much to understand what's happening, because if you just learn from materials or also from a course, well, course is better, but if you just learn something by heart, it doesn't give you that much understanding as if you really do it on your own. And see, if I do this, then the output is this. So this really helps understanding. And yeah.
Okay, great. That does make sense, of course, on that, given the hands-on in that.
Of course, it doesn't directly help you. Well, sometimes with the question, if you, when you have very little time, then learning by heart the materials is the fastest way, but yeah, then you forget very quickly. So you've got the best ways to do both, starting with materials and course, doing sandbox example, and then additional learn something by heart.
All right, that leads me to a question, which is also from one of the participants here, going to be the second last question we have time to answer. My addition to your answers in here, the sandbox in here, leads to also ask about, are there any actual case studies with hands-on, or just case studies, the big ones that takes forever to read through when it comes to the exam? So A, do we have a live environment you have to work on? And B, would there be a case study like the customer has this kind of required setup? What would we do as super users or consultants? Do we find any of those in the exam?
Yeah, there are some case studies with questions on. So you've got to answer something, then it comes the next question related, and then basically, are you still sure that your first answer was correct or something like that?
Trying to make you unsure, I guess. They normally succeed, at least with me. All right. It looks like actually we are able to finish on time. We even have answered all the questions in here. As mentioned in the chat, you will have links being sent out to recordings. So those of you who are not able to join from the start or miss the sound or whatever, you would be able to see it again on that. So all, thank you very much for joining, and for you, Andreas, thank you very much for sharing your knowledge about the exam and otherwise with the expertise. And then we're looking forward to see what happens in our classes, and also the coming days with more questions coming around and so on. So thank you very much, Andreas, for being here, and you guys in the webinar, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, hope to see you on some other webinars with or without sound and cameras and so on. We made it still. So thank you for joining another session with X-Camera. This is Finn from X-Academy out of Copenhagen. I wish you a great day. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye now, Andreas.